Now I have the great pleasure to introduce to you tonight a person who I consider to be a man among very few who can do what he can do in our generation, perhaps any generation. What you don't know, or you've heard a little bit about, is why I wanted to be here, why I have such a passionate involvement in alternative medicine, alternative healing, and alternative modalities. Why it's very important to me that people like Mark Nicola are able to do what they do without fearing that they're going to be prosecuted or persecuted by a wide array of individuals, generally the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, the Federal Trade Commission, Department of Justice, a variety of the state counterparts for all of these entities. They're not happy, along with their kind of institutional partners, such as the pharmaceutical industry and a lot of their industrial cohorts. They don't like people like Mark Nicola. They don't like alternative medicine. It's effective, it's inexpensive, and in fact it does give people like you and people like me and an awful lot of people who unfortunately have not had the opportunity to truly experience this alternative, some options to actually control their health. Because what we're talking about here when we talk about alternative medicine is truly an alternative. I think an awful lot of people go through life thinking that they don't have a lot of choices. I know I did for a large part of my life. I thought that somehow health was random. I thought that you were lucky, you were unlucky, you were always kind of waiting around for the proverbial shoe to fall and something bad could befall you. It was only after I began to know Mark and understand Mark's models and protocols for teaching that I understood that really there is something else, that we really do have the ability to manage our lives a lot differently than that. We have an ability to control our health. We have an ability to understand and control our wellness, and therefore to some extent our sickness. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. I don't think that the established medical community, along with all the institutional and financial partners they have, really want us to understand that. And the good thing for me is that for people like Mark to be able to do what he does for people like you, there've got to be a couple of people like me who make sure that they can do it in a way that they're not threatened. And that's very important to me, and that's one of the reasons I'm here tonight. I consider Mark a wonderful friend. I met Mark about 14 or 15 years. Would you like to come up on the stage? I'm missing my best lines? I must. Are other people having difficulty hearing me too? Yes. Shall I start again? I met Mark about 14 or 15 years ago when I was a lawyer working at a big firm in Boston, sitting behind my desk one day feeling pretty tired, feeling kind of like the rainy weather outside and not quite knowing why. And Mark had been referred to me by another individual, another holistic practitioner who I had done some stuff for, but I wasn't really as involved and engaged by the holistic practice at that point. And I remember Mark came kind of wet, stumbling into my office and walked up to me. I don't know how much you actually know Mark. I think you'll know him a lot better after you go through an evening with him, which is truly somewhere between a gift and a pleasure. But he comes stumbling into my office, shakes my hand, and by the time he had let go of my hand in greeting, he had already gone through my entire medical history with me, which of course he had no idea what that was, but he was uncannily accurate and correct. He had gone through my emotional history with me. He had come up with some differential diagnosis of really what I need to do to make myself maximize my own potential in life. And I'm only slightly exaggerating. And I think he even knew what I'd eaten last night and the night before, and that it wasn't even entirely digested yet. And I have to tell you, I was very moved by the moment. I still remember it as it were yesterday. It was kind of like, I guess in that movie Casablanca, it was the beginning of a very beautiful friendship, a friendship that's meant an awful lot to me, far more than I could ever express in words. Even though I'm a lawyer, I find words generally to be a very limited way to express feelings and to express thoughts. But it was the beginning of my relationship with Mark. It was the beginning of a dialogue we've had over the last 15 years where I've done my very best to protect him and add whatever I can to the mix. And I've had the distinct pleasure to learn a lot about Mark and his protocols and how he looks at life. And I will tell you that the whole notion that we can manage our lives, that we can control our lives, that it is not an entirely random event that somehow is imposed upon us, but we can be active participants, in that and actually make a difference in our lives, our loved ones' lives. That the whole notion underlying what Mark does, and I'm sure those of you that know Mark understand that already, and those of you that are here tonight to get a better sense of what's happening in his model will know a lot more by the end of the evening. But the whole notion that balance is what matters. There's no one good medicine for everyone. There's no one good approach for everyone. That what every one of us has to do is make balance. And if we make balance, if we understand that balance is key, and to get balance, that we have to learn that we live on different levels, that we have to align ourselves on these different levels, that we have to stack up in a way that they work off each other rather than work against each other. The spiritual part of ourselves, the physical part of ourselves, the emotional part of ourselves. That if any one of those entities is not working, that none of it can work, and we can't get total health. And we really are at the mercy of a lot of the forces out there if we don't do this for ourselves. That was an incredible revelation for me. For years I had looked at people trying to get well. I had seen incredibly sick people who were very dedicated to being well. And I remember at one point I was over at an institute where the protocol there was to give wheatgrass, fresh wheatgrass, and that's a very yin type of treatment. Those of you that are familiar with yin and yang will of course know that that's a very broad sense of balance. And I remember thinking that a lot of people would seem to get better, and some even cured from cancers and other degenerative diseases, while some people would get much worse immediately on this wheatgrass and other fresh juice diet. And I was confused, because I found the same thing happening in the other protocols and other modalities I was looking at. Whether it be macrobiotics, whether it was, whatever, different kinds of medicines. It was almost like organized religion. Everybody had their God, and they lived by that God, and anything that didn't fit in that paradigm didn't work. But what they all were missing was balance, and how important balance was. And spending the last 14 or 15 years with Mark and talking to Mark, I've really come to understand that in making balance and aligning oneself in the spiritual and the emotional and the physical components, that underlying all of that, and I'm sure you're going to hear more about that tonight, is the notion that you cannot have balance without a simple life. You cannot have balance without an authentic life. There's an incredible power inherent in the notion of authenticity and the notion of simplicity. And it's so hard for all of us to let go of a lot of the material and sometimes non-material things that interfere with the kind of authenticity that we're all really seeking and the kind of simplicity that we're all really seeking. And many of us live in different worlds. I'm probably the greatest example of having my foot in different worlds and sometimes feeling I'm being torn apart. But I will tell you that as I get older and as I hopefully get wiser and as I spend a lot more time with Mark and a group of our friends, I understand very intuitively and very completely, or certainly far more completely, what that balance is going to require, what that authenticity needs to actually effectuate itself. And I think that's a lot about what you're going to hear tonight, and I think that's a lot about probably what a lot of you have been thinking about, whether subliminally or consciously over the past months and years. You probably wouldn't be here tonight. And I think probably you can do a lot better than hearing about that from a lawyer. So I'm going to introduce a very dear friend of mine, and again, somebody who I'm sure will be a very dear friend of yours, Dr. Mark Mincola. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I want everybody to stand up, please. We're going to get you involved right away in changing the energy in this room, of course. I'm going to ask everybody here, please, hands in front. Nice and comfortable. We're going to spread the hands apart slowly and back again. Nice and easy. Expansion and contraction of the universe. Very nice. Beautifully done. Okay, let's just change for a moment. Hands down like so. One hand to the right, just like you're wiping a table. and back. Left hand off, same thing and back. Wiping away self-created doubt. Sound like you could use some of that? Just a little, huh? These are 3,400-year-old exercises that very few people know. Okay, this time we're going to change that to both hands at the same time. This is called smoothing the path of life. Could you use a little of that? Sure. The point is you can create that. These aren't exercises that are just supposed to happen once a day. They're supposed to be incorporated into your manifest, into your life. Nicely done. One more. Okay, we'll do one final one. Left hand under right. We start to weave the left hand towards the body. There you go. This is called weaving the web of universal protection. This is a very important Qigong exercise that my teacher believed expanded the pericardium, kept you protected not only from germs, bacteria, and viruses, but kept you protected from any kind of negative thoughts, negative energies. So it's a great exercise to keep the old bug light around you. Wonderfully done. Great. Give yourself a little hand. Okay, have a seat. There's just a few things that we're going to hear me talk about from the podium this evening. Most is going to be away from the podium. But I wrote 7 different lead-ins to each one of these major topics that we're going to do this evening. And the first topic is awakening to life force energy. And I wrote, within our precious bodies there are glands and organs. Within our glands and organs are vital tissues and fluids. Within our vital tissues and fluids are 60 trillion cells. Within each cell, there is a galaxy of atoms. And within each atom, there are worlds within worlds. Each one vivified and unified by the same river of life. So when we talk about life force energy, we just actually worked with it. The Chinese call it Qi. There are many different references for it. But the key is, we live in a world and we live in a culture where our reality is based on the cells and the tissues that we just talked about. But what drives those cells? What drives your emotions? What drives your thoughts, your wishes, your hopes, and your dreams? Energies that you can't see. But because we can't see them doesn't mean they don't exist. Thus the topic of this section, awakening to life force energy. We're just beginning as a culture to awaken to life force energy, in large part thanks to the Eastern culture. But what I'm going to show you in just a moment or two are some slides. Partly slides from research that we've done, some informal research we've done. But I want you, when you look at these slides, to be thinking about what's inside the cells in your body. And through this entire evening, if there's one thought that I really want you to embrace, it's a thought very different than you're used to. You're used to thinking of yourself as something very small in a vast universe. The universe is endless. We're always hearing Carl Sagan talk about the billions and billions and billions of light years around us. And there are billions of light years around us. It's infinite out there. But now it's time in history, in this culture, it's time for our consciousness to begin embracing inner space. It's time to start realizing that everything that exists out there, the vastness, the infiniteness of possibilities, the limitless possibilities that are out there in the universe, exist equally from within yourself. Think of every star, every galaxy, every solar system. The vastness that's around you is a reflection of the endlessness within you. We're not accustomed to living that way. We're not accustomed to thinking that way. We wake up in the morning and we sort of go through our mundane lives. Today, no different than yesterday, maybe a few more bills to pay. But in reality, there's a universe beyond the limitation of reductionistic thoughts that we embrace every day. So when I say awakening to life force energy, I'm saying awakening to yourself. When we talk about healing work that I'm engaged in, it's not me that's doing the work. I'm a facilitator. But if I can get you to the point where you awaken to yourself, there's no limit to the healing that you can do. There is no limit to the healing that you can do. I didn't say doctoring. I'm not talking about pills. I'm talking about healing. So I'm going to show you some slides now, and I'm going to show you what's taking place within the universe of your cells. And I'm going to show you some pictures that really show clearly the power of the river that pushes your cells, the unseen life force that is everywhere in the universe. Can we get those slides up, guys? My thanks to Mike Ricks for helping us with these slides. And these slides are the first set of slides I want to show you. And they're referred to as cymatics. And cymatics was the work of Dr. Hans Jenny from Switzerland. And Dr. Jenny essentially showed us that we could take these formations here, and each of these formations is nothing more than sand. Each one of these is sand. And it's sand that's actually on metal plates. And what Jenny did is he actually created frequency vibration from music. And every time he approached each of these metal plates with sand, with different keys and tones and frequencies and vibrations of music, he found that there would be unique, different vibrational patterns in each of these. Now, what he really found is that each time, hundreds of times in these replication studies, over and over, every time that there was sand on a plate, if he played something in the key of A, it would look like one formation. The key of B would be another formation. The key of C would be another formation. And he would do these studies over and over and over and consistently found that the vibration never changed. It was constant each time. Next slide. That's my first book, actually. All right, this is another Hans Jenny experiment with cotton balls. What he wanted to do was show that inanimate objects actually were conduits of vibration as well. We're used to thinking of living things as being conduits of vibration. Here's a cotton ball before music was played. This is a cotton ball reacting to the vibration of music. So not only do you get into good music, cotton balls get into good music. All right, next slide. All right, these are actually cell experiments that were done with Kirlian photography, and they're actually live cells in Kirlian photography. These on the left are pictures of different single cells that were exposed to music, and you can see the difference vibrationally. So when your cells hear music, they react to it and they respond to it. Dr. James Lovelock, back in 1989, actually did some interesting work, and he established that cells talk to each other through sound and light, through packets of sound and light. They communicate. So every cell in the human body, every cell that's sitting in that body, in that seat that you're in right now, communicates through sound and light. Next. This is another Kirlian, and again, it shows a picture of before and after, except these are hemoglobin cells that he worked with. Not just red blood cells, but hemoglobin cells. So on the left, you see a vibratory caption, a depiction, I should say, of a hemoglobin cell, and then on the right, you see after it experienced the vibration of music. Next. This is one of my favorites, actually. This is a sequence from top left to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These sequence of 9 slides It's representative of a cancer cell. A cancer cell experiment done by Fabien Mammon in Paris. And this shows the cancer cell over a period of 14 seconds responding to the vibration of a human voice. They exploded the cell after 14 seconds, right here. That's a cancer cell that exploded. Started out up here. So what he found is that when you take cancer cells and expose them to certain vibrations, musical or sound vibrations, the cancer cell couldn't deal with that. It couldn't manage the frequency. So everything has a certain frequency that either enhances or breaks down the life force within those cells. So you and I have, as I always tell my patients, a couple thoughts about cancer. Number one, you weren't born with cancer. Nobody's born with cancer. There's a reason, because the chemistry that you're born with doesn't facilitate it. Okay? It's like an environment. Your body's an environment, and as long as you maintain a homeostatic environment, cancer doesn't like that place. Well, we know that there are ways to do that. There are ways to affect the vibration, the energy of a cell. We know food does that. We talk about life force. We're not just talking about these cancer cells or hemoglobin cells here, but we're also talking about food. You know, we tend to think of food in material terms. We tend to think of carrots as having vitamin A. But vibrationally speaking, those carrots build up those carotenoids in there because they're absorbing electrons from the sun. So those carrots are absorbing electron particles and storing them for you. So when you really break down vitamin A at an energetic level, not at a material chemical level, you're dealing with electrons. So there's life force energy in everything, in you, in myself, in cancer cells. Everything has a frequency, everything has a vibration that works or that doesn't work for it, that builds it up or breaks it down. And the human voice, in 9 seconds, exploded a cancer cell. Next slide. These are some early Simeon-Curlian photographs of a healthy rat's tail over here. Just what you'd always want, a healthy rat's tail. And if that wasn't good enough, we could give you a rat's tail that had cancer, and here it is right here. But you could see the difference between the healthy and the cancerous tail right here. And obviously what you're looking at is you're looking at electromagnetic energy. Okay? We're talking about the stuff the Chinese called Qi, or the stuff that the physicists call quanta or particles. Call it whatever you want. The idea is that there's a magnetic congruency here. When you and I are healthy and we're not on the Southeast Expressway, this is sort of what we look like. Bang! Southeast Expressway, right there. All right? So you can kind of relate to that, no doubt. Next slide. This is a gentleman actually that we wanted to show in one of our experiments. You could see there's actually, he was not shoplifting. I don't want anybody to think he was shoplifting. There's a vial under his shirt, and it looks like a mugshot. But actually, that's a gentleman that one of our seminars, what we did is we hooked him up to Curlian electrodes. We photographed his magnetic field here first, and then we photographed his magnetic field over there. Now look at his throat here, and look at his throat over there. That's a vial of pumpkin, okay? That's a homeopathic vial. So when the FDA says, hey, homeopathy doesn't do anything, it's nothing more than water, well then what is that? That's energy, but when your reference point doesn't begin with energy, it's not within your vocabulary. If your reference point is cellular, in material, in tissue, in cells, in physicality, in materiality, then you're not going to grasp that. But what that is representative of the energy that, as you can see from photo A to photo B, is very clearly very magnetic at the point of his thyroid. Next shot. This is one of my favorites too, because actually we had this woman, we shot a number of these Curlian photos of her very near ultraviolet. And again, when you think in terms of color energy, you're going from near ultraviolet to near infrared. Anyway, we shot a lot of photos like this. Boom, 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 boom. And she was pretty consistent. And then I said, I got a great idea. What I want you to do is I want you to prove Einstein's theory. Energy and matter are interconvertible and transferable. They're the same thing. Energy and matter are no different. Wherever you have tissues and cells, you got energy. So I said, if Einstein's right about that, then when you and I think a thought, even though we can't see it with our eyes, that thought supposedly travels at the speed of light. Okay? So our thought produces material. It produces matter. So I said, what I want you to do is I want you to just close your eyes for 20 minutes over here, and I want you to envision the sun coming up over your left shoulder. Let's see if we can capture it. And everybody said, what are you, crazy? And I said, no, I'm not crazy. Look over her left shoulder. Looks a little redder than this photo, doesn't it? Next photo. All right, this is actually the first live cell photo. We just did these recently. Live cell photos basically are really close-in shots of these red cells, and the light refracts from the side, so it shoots a lot more energy back, a lot more visuals back. These are called chylomicrons right here, these little dots here. And these chylomicrons are representative of your lymphatic system detoxifying itself. It's lymph toxicity that you're pulling out. These are red cells here, these big beach balls here are red cells, and they sort of are pretty healthy looking here. Some of them a little bit of clumping, sticking to each other. Ideally, you see them sort of like this, separate, free-floating. But there's not a lot of bad stuff going on there. That's the original photo. Next shot, after hearing music, we played one of the songs, one of the cuts that you're going to hear this evening, actually, to this patient here. And what you see here is incredible chylomicrons, a lot more chylomicrons, a lot more detoxification of the lymph system, tons of chylomicrons. And look at the platelet aggregation. You don't see too many freestanding cells. They're all piggybacked. Let's go back to the first one, Mike. If we can go, look at the difference between that after hearing a 3-minute song. Next one. 3 minutes of music. Okay, so when you think you're listening to music, you think you're just listening to music. You got a world inside there. So your cells are reacting to that music. Now, I would tell you that this is all about the healing process. Healing is a 2-part process. Think about it. It's detoxification first, and then it's tonification. If I have an old, broken down building, I have to strip it, gut it, start over, build a new building. That's what healing is all about. So music's first impression on the cells, detox. Look at the chylomicrons. Okay? Next. Let's go to the next sample. This is actually a cancer patient that has been working to correct pH, and obviously pretty clean, pretty good. Once again, similar to the first original we saw, there's a little bit of clumping, okay? A little bit of clumping, but not too bad. Not a lot of chylomicrons. Very alkaline person, really working on their diet, cleaning things up. Pretty good looking blood. Next. After the, oh, that's a live cell. Or that's a dried cell. Mike, can we get there we go. That's the first. How about the next follow-up there? Now we're out of sequence here. That's dried cell analysis. That's the first dried cell analysis. What you see here is you see free radical patch. That's a patch of free radicals, which obviously when you study the whole idea of chemistry and cancer, you do not want to encourage free radicals. Dare I go to the next slide? What am I going to get here? Here we go. All right, yeah, that's after the music. The dried cell analysis shows a lot more free radical activity. So again, things open right up. Music really stirring up poison in the body, if you will. Stirs not only your passions, your emotions, stirs up your lymph system, stirs up your cells immunologically. Everything is detoxing. Everything is bailing out right here. Next. And that was actually after Qigong. You know the Qigong exercises that you just did a minute ago? Well, actually, if you look at a lot of those free radicals, you could see these lighter yellowish white areas are fill-ins. So the free radical puddles filled in with the Qigong exercises. Next. Okay, that's platelet. Platelets aren't too bad. This is a first cancer cell photo here. And again, a little bit of clumping, but not too bad. Next. That's after music. Once again, same thing. In every one of these, what we saw is that the minute the music was listened to, after 3 minutes of listening to the music, the cells piggybacked, clumped, a lot of platelet aggregation, things got really, really detoxed. Let's just go back to A again here, the one before this. Look at the difference 3 minutes of music did from here, next, here. 3 minutes of music, next. And that was after the Qigong. So what we did is a sequence of first blood test, then we did the music, which stirred everything up, and then we wanted to bring it back to homeostasis or healing. So let's go to the one just before this. There's what music did, and then the Qigong exercise that you did, bang, right there. Okay, so what we again were finding here is we were finding that the music stirred up the toxicity. In every case, the lymphatic, chylomicrons, etc., very active, a lot of platelet aggregation, and then 3 minutes later, Qigong exercise settled everything back down. Next slide. Yeah, this is an original a dried cell analysis where you could see some free radical patches here. Next. That's what music did. Look at the free radical patches that opened up here. Again, most people have a hard time with thinking, well, I would think the music would just make everybody feel better. Look, that's not how healing takes place. Like when you have emotions in your body that you know are making you feel crazy, but you're stuffing them and you're saying to yourself, I just want to get some ice cream. Now, I can tell by that laugh that a lot of people have done that. Or I just want to hear some nice music, or I want to go to a movie, or I want to go visit a friend, I just want to feel better. Well, guess what? What the music does is the music, as you're feeling better at certain maybe emotional levels, is stirring all of these free radical puddles up, and things are getting very, very detoxy in your body. Followed by Qigong exercise, which kind of started to patch those up. That was 3 minutes later. Those same exact free radical patches started to mend or heal up, and they repair themselves. Whenever you see that yellowish white around there, that means that those are areas that were healed up. Next. That's probably that's the second one to shoot on again, Mike. Yeah. All right, let's go back to the first one. Yeah. This is, again, a cancer patient here, and you can see their original shot. That's an active white cell up there. If you want to see your good guys that like to eat viruses and stuff, people say, why am I taking monolaurin again? Because of him. He likes monolaurin. He likes vitamin A. He likes vitamin C. He likes good food, and he does not like ice cream even though you're having a bad day. All right, next. All right, and that's actually platelet aggregation again. After music, everybody starts to clump and get a little nervous down there, and the body's basically detoxing itself and getting really, really about to, the whole idea focused on cleaning the body out. Next, and that's the Qigong. Now, the thing I really like about this one here, look at how suspended each of these red cells are. No, not a lot of clumping at all. That's what you want. You want them picking up as much oxygen from the blood as possible, and you want them suspended and free-floating like that. Let's do the one before it again, Mike. Again, music, toxicity. Next, Qigong. Okay, thanks. Next, is that it, Mike? Oh, yeah, the last series of dried cell. Again, first shots of dried cell usually show one patch or two of free radicals. Next, music. Free radicals open up, detox again. Next, Qigong did what? Healed them, mended them back up again. All right, thank you, Mike. Mike, that's it, is it not? Yes, thanks. Mike Ricks. Mike worked very hard helping me get those slides together, and I appreciate all the help that you gave me, Mike. So the idea that, as we just said a second ago, awakening to life force, the whole focus of this first topic is to become more aware of the fact that there's a universe inside us. It is constantly reacting to everything that's happening. You may not be able to see it, you may not be able to connect with it, but it's always in there, it's always happening. But from the positive side, it means that the more attention we pay to it, the more beautiful music we listen to, the more Qigong we do, the more focused we are in believing in our inner universe, and the more expansive we become at becoming spaced in, as I say. I love that idea, getting spaced in. Anyway, the more healing you're capable of doing. There's not just a healer within you, there is a universe within you. I would like to now share the affirmation, and we're going to have now a brief 3-minute sound and light healing. And the affirmation is, I feel radiant healing life force pulsing through me. All right, if we could just move into that sound and light sequence now, guys. of all your little cells piggybacking right now. These are designed to be very meditative and very modal, and it took me a long, long time just to kind of feel the spirit for these. I sort of feel like I was in a trance state when most of these were written. So they were designed purely for one purpose, and that was to bring you into your source. The second topic of the evening is embracing change, ending struggle. And for that I wrote, the only unchanging is unending change. The river of life flows only where there is no resistance. My way of thinking, from what I've learned from patients over the years, is that the root of disease is resistance. And that you and I have something called a will, but nature has a will as well. That actual book cover behind us, the first book, The Wu Wei. A lot of people don't understand why I titled the first book The Wu Wei, but it's sort of a play on words. Wu Wei, W-U-W-E-I, in Taoism, means that there is a way, that there is a natural sort of unseen way of life. There's a river of life that you can't see that wants everything to just keep moving along. They have what they call infinite universal laws, and these ancient laws, 2,600-year-old laws written by the sages. The first one is that energy is everywhere. Everywhere. Whether you can see it or not doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Energy is everywhere. The second infinite universal law is that energy is in the constant state of flux, going from one place to another. It never stays the same. It's always moving. The third infinite law is any force that tries to obstruct the natural movement of energy meets with disharmony. That's the essence of disease in ancient China. Ancient China tells us that, well, disease doesn't have to happen. Disease isn't an automatic. You actually have a say in the matter, and it's all a question of whether or not you resist the way of things or whether or not you just continue to determine for yourself that your fate is moving in a different direction than nature's. And it's all a question of sort of learning a language. It's sort of like when you first go in a language class in high school and you first start studying a language that you've never studied before. It feels completely alien, a completely foreign thing. Or anybody that's ever gone to a foreign country for the first time. I remember the very first time that I went to Paris, I was completely lost. I was there by myself and I couldn't speak the language very well. And I kept ending up in the wrong place because people were misinterpreting, and I was really up to my ears in problems. But whenever you think about the universe has a language that we came here to learn. How many of us really work at listening to what nature's language is? And how many of us really come to understand that it's never, ever, ever silent? I talk about symptoms that way. You know, people think about symptoms. I talked to someone yesterday, actually, and they said, well, I'm on a number of different pain medications for my back, and I'm on a number of different medications for this inflammation and that inflammation. I said, to a point, I said, you really have to be careful, because one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to get so caught up in the notion of taking medication to completely shut off the language of nature, because your body is speaking to you in the symptom of languages, in these symptoms. And that's exactly what symptoms are, the language of the body. It's nature's voice. But it doesn't always start off screaming at us. It's because somebody wasn't listening to the whispers. And the whispers become a little louder, and a little bit louder, and eventually they become screams that our inclination is to shut off, to turn off, to shut down. But the objective is to be less resistant, because you know where the end of the path leads. If you're 45 years old and you're on 4 different medications for a variety of pains, inflammations, and if your way of living is just to tune all of it out and just to get on through the next day, surely if someone were to stop you in your tracks in your busy day and confront you about your path and where it's actually leading, you'd acknowledge that it's not leading to the place that you would want it to lead to. It's sort of like, the idea of investment. I have young people come in all the time and talk about developing energy. I wish I was really good at working with energy. And I really would like to be much more clear working with energy. And I say, well, it doesn't start that way. It's sort of likened to when someone is investing in the world and they say, geez, I'm 25 years old and fresh out of college and I'd love to be a millionaire. Well, that's a great concept. It might take you a little while. So I think what we're doing is we're talking about cultivating something immaterial here. Cultivation is a very important word. Cultivation shows intention. When you wake up every day and you say, nature's talking, I want to get a little bit better at listening. I want to get a little bit more included in the club of nature. What a great place to be. What a remarkable universe. There's a universe of miracles, of limitlessness, outside and inside. But am I cultivating a connection to that? Is that the way I'm living my life? And is that where my path is leading? Or am I resisting that? What am I cultivating? Am I cultivating disease? Or am I cultivating wholeness? So I think the idea of this particular section in the talk is that when we learn to embrace the change, even though we may not agree with it, someone may die. Someone may get sick. I just talked to a friend today whose home flooded up in the North Shore, and I'm sure a lot of you folks had water damage and that sort of thing. Well, nobody wishes for that. I don't think it's a matter of feeling positive about it. I think it's a matter of realizing that for every yin exchange in the universe, there's a yang. For every wonderful thing that happens, there's some kind of difficulty. I like to play it out like this. I like to think of it as 2 different things. I say, there's only 2 things that the universe brings into any life: blessings and lessons. And if we're living right, they both end up the same. So nobody's trying to pull one over on anybody here. The universe just sort of works that way. And we're either working with it or we're not. The affirmation here is, I flow like an endless stream with the way of the universe. I flow like an endless stream with the way of the universe. The third topic I'm going to speak about this evening, tapping into the healing powers of nature. And I wrote this: the universe is in perfect balance. Wherever there's positive entropy, there's negative entropy. Wherever there's chaos, there's order. Wherever there's disharmony, there's harmony. Wherever there is disease, there is wellness. There are sufficient natural resources, mostly untapped, to heal the entire universe. There is only a shortage of seekers. When we talk about tapping into the healing powers of nature, the first thing that comes to my mind is what I call the first medicine: food. Food is the first medicine. But there are many different, when you think about medicine, you think of diagnosis and you think of medication. And I think that the universe has provided all that. You and I have the ability to tap into energy at the subtlest possible level and to be very much in touch with when we're not well. So the earlier we tap into that, the better we are at getting on top of whatever illness we have to manage. How do we do that? You know how I believe we do that. And I'm going to ask for a volunteer now. It's time to start doing a little bit of muscle testing here. So could I have a volunteer? Show of hands, anybody out there? Why don't you come on up? Let's make her feel welcome. How are you? Good to see you. Let everybody know your name. Sarah. Sarah? Okay. What we're going to do with Sarah is we're going to do just a little bit of muscle testing here. Now, we're talking about tapping into the natural resources in this universe that help us to heal, help us to be well. As I said, healing or doctoring, any way you look at it, is all about the process of finding out what the problem is first and then fixing it. So there's diagnosis and there's medicine. So we talked about food as a really good medicine, but also there are medicines like music, tones, sounds, things like that, light. So we have plenty of medicine available, and as we saw in the slides earlier, certainly sound and light is just as effective as anything possibly could be. So what we're going to do here is do a little bit of kind of tapping in or diagnostic work here, trying to find out what's going on. So I'm going to ask you to raise up your arm, and she's going to resist as I try to do that. Okay, she's plenty strong. Okay, now you can relax for a second. We're going to use her arm. Why are we going to use her arm? Because she has a nervous system. She has 10 billion neurons between her ears. She has 1,000 billion neuron junctions all throughout the body. Well, the Chinese sort of tapped into a lot of those. They call them acupuncture points and acupuncture zones. So, you know, the Chinese are really good at tapping into diagnostics through the body and through the nervous system for centuries. We're sort of like taking our own little approach to doing much the same thing. So I say when the nervous system is aware of virtually everything that's happening, it's a great system to talk to about what to do here, what to determine, how to diagnose, and how to work with the body. So you're going to raise up here, resist good and strong. Now we know that the nervous system reacts and responds to everything, absolutely everything, 24/7. So if I call out some images to her, if I say something like Osama bin Laden, that's going to happen. Now that would happen to anybody except Osama bin Laden. And if he's here, could we please... No, never mind. All right, so raise up good and strong. Now we're going to give some positive images here. We're going to give an image of Mother Teresa, and you resist good and strong. And how about if we give an image of chocolate ice cream? Whoa, not bad. She thinks she's got me here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to tap into some of her organ fields. So we go to places like bile duct here, liver, gallbladder, kidney, pancreas, spleen, and heart, and lung, and adrenal right there. Raise up again. Adrenal, that's adrenal cortex. All right, so I'm going to come up to the adrenal cortex again here, resist good and strong, and I'm just going to basically tap like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap like that, and I'm going to call out a couple different foods like broccoli, and now I'm going to count 1, 2, so broccoli's pretty strong here. Raise up again, I'm going to count at something like green beans, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. No, your watch is fine. All right, so the idea that her brain is grabbing these images, just like when you're driving along the highway and you hear certain music, or you have certain impressions that you think about in your mind. And unbeknownst to you, the same stuff that we saw in those cell pictures earlier are happening right here. So when your mind is actually grasping some of these images, your nervous system is being affected right away. So your nervous system is sort of like a biofeedback system, and your body is a biofeedback machine. No parlor games. You have nerves, nerve endings, and they react and respond to everything. When you have nightmares, as I always say, even though those nightmares of you falling off a cliff or whatever aren't real, you still perspire. The heart rate still goes up. The biology thinks it's real. It's prepared to deal with it as if it were real, just like this. So, resist good and strong. Her nervous system is prepared to accept these images as if these things were very real. Your body takes you very seriously when you say something like, pickles in chocolate ice cream. Can't say I blame her for that. All right, so let's kind of work with that. I'm going to go over here. You stay right there, and I'm going to actually do this. This is a chromatic pitch pipe, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise up here, and what I'm going to do actually is ask her to resist good and strong here, and I'm going to go back to that adrenal point here like that, and I'm going to do it one more time. And again, that's just an acupuncture point. That's a nerve junction point that's not particularly strong because perhaps she's had a rough day. Maybe you were on the expressway on the way down here. So I'm going to go to the key of A. And I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? That didn't take a whole lot. I'm going to go over here to key of B. 1, 2, 3. Okay, not quite as good, huh? Let's go to C. Raise up again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? So we could go right up the scale. We could go to D. These things are cheap. 1, 2. All right, so I didn't like the sound of that either. How about E? That sounds like Andy Mayberry. All right, E is something right here. One more time. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here is each one of these frequencies is affecting her area of sensitivity magnetically in a very different way. So every time you're listening to music, you think it's just another day listening to music. But you're literally drinking that music up at a cellular level. Don't forget, cells communicate at that photon level. They communicate at that sound vibration, that sound frequency level as well. So each of these different areas in the body actually is able to talk to you about its strengths and its weaknesses. Or as we've done many times before, and we'll do in a minute, there are different food preferences that your body has with regards to foods it would do well with, get strong with, foods that it wouldn't get strong with. Pickles and chocolate ice cream, for example. If she has that image again, she's not going to do very well. Let's do that chocolate ice cream thing again. I can't. She's been working on this. All right, let's do this. I'm going to have one other person come up and join us. Could we have another volunteer? Anybody? Yeah, why don't you come on up? This time what we're going to do is we're going to kind of work in tandem. And how are you? Good to see you. Let everybody know your name.
I'm Andrea.
Andrea? Okay, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you stand behind her, okay, like this. And I'm going to have you put your hand like that, okay? And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you raise your arm up and resist good and strong. And I'm going to put pressure on those same points that were sensitive here, right? We had one there on this side, and her adrenals feel pretty strong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pretty good. Let's go this side here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Much different than yours are, so up we go here. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap your adrenals, and your arm goes down. We're going to have to get these two apart here. Okay, so what we're doing here, for those of you who don't know, let's turn this way, guys. All right, what we're doing is we're actually hooking them up electromagnetically. It's called proxy, it's called surrogate. There are 14 different areas of electrical polarity in the human body. And of each of these areas of polarity, there's plus and there's minus polarities in the body. For example, you can actually test resist good and strong. You can go to different organ points. I can turn my hand over this way, and her adrenals feel pretty good. If I go this way, they go right down. So there's different polarity. There's plus polarity in the front of the hand, minus electrical polarity in the back of the hand, neutral at the fingertips. What we're doing here, though, is we're actually surrogating. Now, the minute she takes her hand off, they're no longer electrically co-joined. And again, I said electrically, didn't I? We're talking about energy tonight. The electricity in the human body is 0.225 volts of electricity. It cycles between 3 and roughly 30 cycles per second. It can, in some people, go up to 50 cycles per second, only on the Southeast Expressway. All right, hook up one more time. Let's just show that one more time here, and up we go, and resist. And this time what we're going to say is we're going to say pickles and chocolate ice cream, see? Okay, and this time we're going to go back here and say chocolate ice cream. How does she do that?
So can I have ice cream now?
Get out of here. Let's hear it for these guys. Thank you very much. All right, this sounds like a chocolate ice cream commercial right now, doesn't it? All right, so the idea here is that we do produce energy, we share energy, and most importantly, when we're tapping into nature and the potential to diagnose, to tap into, to discover what's happening in our lives, at very early stages we have the ability to learn a great deal about ourselves. I always tell people, that when somebody gets the flu, they often wait until they're really, really sick and weak before they determine that they better lie down or they better take a day off or whatever. But your body's sort of talking to you for a long time prior at these subtle energetic levels. And I say if you tap in and do this kind of work that we're talking about tonight, a little bit of muscle testing, a little bit of asking, and again, you're doing nothing more than asking your body by creating images for your brain that creates electrical charges that are either plus or minus. But absolutely everything you encounter, whether it's a material encounter like music, like we saw those cells reacting to music, or whether it's a mental notion of something, your electrical system is going haywire. It's always responding, reacting. It's very active, and it's affecting everything in your body. Like we said earlier, everything is interconnected, co-joined, and unified by energy. The affirmation here is, I receive abundant life from nature's healing wellspring. And I really believe that we do, in fact, receive abundant life from nature's healing wellspring. The magnificent food that's out there, all those beautiful colors, I mean, the hundreds and hundreds of carotenoids. It's amazing, when we study these things nowadays. One thing I just kind of wanted to share with you really briefly here before we go to sound and light. I really think this is important, but when I talk about food a lot in my television and my radio segments, there's so much remarkable information right now that validates, that food is really and truly medicine. We're not just kind of dreaming this stuff up anymore. 25 years ago when I started doing my work, I would say, yeah, this guy's crazy, he says food's medicine. But I picked real quickly before we go on my three favorite topics on my You Are What You Eat segment on NECN for the year 2005. I'm just going to give them to you real quickly. Dr. Avram Raz of the Tumor Progression Laboratories Institute at the Barbara Ann Karamanos Cancer Research Center in Detroit discovered in a study that 94% of the rats injected with human lung cancer cells exhibited an anti-metastatic response to modified citrus pectin from grapefruit. 94% anti-cancer effect from modified citrus pectin. Raz found that the citrus pectin blocked the galactin-3 protein from spreading the cancer. Cancer, in order to spread metastases, requires what's called the galactin-3 protein. It's a sticky protein, and it allows cancer to drop an anchor into it and really dig in, root itself, and multiply. Well, what they found is citrus pectin antagonizes it, that it pulls this sticky anchoring pectin, this galactin rather, out of the body so that cancer can't root itself. So it's literally anti-metastatic. My second was, I did an interview with Dr. Daniel Nixon from the Hollings Cancer Research Institute at the University of South Carolina Medical School, who discovered that the equivalent of 3/4 of a cup of raspberries caused apoptosis, cancer cell death. Those little seeds in the raspberries. In rats injected with human cancer cells. Over 25 weeks, Nixon's research team found that as much as 67% reduction in total cancer proliferation with raspberries. And the last one is, according to a study published in the September 2005 Journal of Neuroscience, Researchers at the University of South Florida discovered that in both human cell cultures and animal cell studies, a substance commonly found in green tea called EGCG, or epigallocatechin gallate, reversed amyloid plaques, the cause of Alzheimer's disease, by 54% in 4 weeks. Green tea, raspberries, and citrus fruit. The universe had you all thought out, was ready for you long before you got here, fully prepared to take care of you, to heal you, to doctor you. So when I talk about tapping into the healing powers of nature, the affirmation here is, I receive abundant life from nature's healing wellspring. Guys? The next topic is healing from the heart. And I wrote this. When love flows as does blood into the heart is equally as it flows out, that single heart can heal the entire universe. I believe that. When we're first born in this world of ours, we're born in very vulnerable states, and we're born very much in need of support and very much dependent for life force, for love, for care. And as we grow, we start to become separate. And as we first become separate, we feel alone. And unless we come back together within ourselves, to become within ourselves that which we could never be initially in an external concept, then healing can't really take place. I always say healing is really a matter of wholeness. Without wholeness, there can't be healing, and there can't be wholeness without self-integration. So this whole process of believing that we're connected, and we always are at some level connected to a family, but there's something different. There's still something more to life, and we all sort of feel that and sense that. So we begin in this family system for all the good and for all the bad, for all the love and for all the suffering, for all the difficulty and all the ease, for all the support and all the abandonment, all the dark and all the light, and all the yin and all the yang, all there together, creating that whole perfect circle of imperfection. We become conscious and aware of the fact that we have a self, and a self that needs feeding in ways that perhaps that family system couldn't feed it, or perhaps the world couldn't feed it, the culture couldn't feed it. So there's a sense of longing, a sense of loneliness, a sense of hunger that makes it very easy sometimes to give in to addiction, to compulsion, because we're still not really completely conscious of our inner universe. We haven't celebrated that universe. We haven't really been led into the openness, the endlessness of the possibilities of our own heart yet. So our heart feels very fragile and very frightening. So there's a point at which we sort of stand separate and stand alone. There's a point at which disease often becomes the end result of dis-ease. And it often is the end product of addiction and compulsion, because it sort of feels like we're alone and there's an outer world and an outer universe that's constantly appealing to us. It's constantly trying to sell us the notion of completeness. It's constantly trying to sell us the notion of a product that can make us complete, a vision that can make us complete. It's constantly reflecting form in some form back to us every day. And invariably, we stand back at that lonely place before we tuck in bed every night and say, I'm not so certain that I feel fulfilled, that I feel whole. And I just had another whole day of the world reflecting possibility back to me that's trying to entice me, that's trying to seduce me, that's trying to suggest that internal is never enough, that external is where my completeness lies. The idea that external reaction, or what we often call codependency, is something to literally survive us. The illusion that we don't have an internal universe creates such a dis-ease in all of us that our cells become disrupted, and then we become crazed to search for a medicine, for a doctor, for a healer, for some kind of remedy. The healing is very simply all about embracing the precious heart that you have. That's where the center of your universe is. There is no limit to the healing potential of a heart that's loved by the self. It's really easy for us to get caught up in the notion of external form, and to love external form, and to want to be loved by external form, and to become almost addicted, if not in fact addicted, to the notion of that reciprocity. But ultimately what it boils down to is there can be no healing without wholeness, and there can be no wholeness without self-integration. Once the eye within the eye, the ear within the ear, and the heart within the heart are discovered, once the silent observer within us brings us to a place where we can settle into our own heart and become that and embrace that. Once we become our own mother, our own father in our heart, once we become our own family within our heart, once we become our own neighborhood within our heart, our own world and our own universe within our heart, that's when we become whole. And that's when medicine becomes the very heart that we possess. That's when the medicine is the miracle, and the miracle is the heart. When love flows, as does blood, into the heart as equally as it flows out, that single heart can heal the entire universe. The affirmation is, true healing love resides deep within my heart. And it does. Next song. Once discovered, the integrity from such solidarity creates a self where no disease can ever reside. The idea that there's a great term that the young people, when my sons were younger, they used quite often, get real, Dad. I like that term. That term is a very powerful spiritual term. Of course, they never thought of it in those terms, but getting real is really what we came here for. There's no other reason we came here other than to get real. And I think we have to get to the place of real through an awful lot of suffering. That's why I said in the first part of this that true self waits patiently through an eternity of dis-ease to be discovered. So true self is always waiting, always waiting, always waiting. And once discovered, it requires expression. You know, the idea that there's great integrity and great strength in being the warrior. A warrior really, when you think of the vision of a warrior isn't just going to do battle to hurt other people, but there's virtue there. The virtue is solidarity, the belief that I know who I am, and I'll go to my death to support what I believe in. That's the virtue that I'm talking about. There's power in that. There's incredible strength in that. There's integrity in that. The idea that everything in the universe, like the first exercise we did, expansion and contraction, all forces are either moving apart or coming together. And we think about wellness or wholeness, we talk about strength, we talk about fitness, we talk about long life. It's about a gathering process. It's a matter of having the integrity to live a long time. Remember the rat's tail? There wasn't a lot of integrity when that cancer was injected. Quite the opposite. So I want you to think about that rat's tail for a minute, because the idea that when you and I are sort of stressed out and really not aligned with our nature, and when you and I are not really bearing the spirit of the warrior, we're kind of not sure about what we're doing, don't really believe in what we're doing. I got to do it just because I got to do it. My dad used to always say that. I used to see my dad get up in the morning, and God bless him, I mean, he really worked so hard, but he looked so bummed out all the time. And I was a little kid saying, Dad, how come you're so bummed out? Well, you got to do what you got to do, and blah, 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 blah. You got to work. You may not like your work. I said, well, if you don't like your work, Dad, why don't you stop doing it? No, everybody's got to do things they don't like sometimes. And I said, wow, that doesn't sound like I want to go there at all. You know? So I remember thinking to myself, the poor guy, I loved him with all my heart, but boy, did he seem tormented about the American dream? Kind of like an American nightmare. So, the idea of you and I having a choice to discover our virtue and to live it out with integrity, it's not always easy to do that. Sometimes it's very difficult to do that because it requires discipline, it requires self-sacrifice, but single most important thing it requires is for you to be in touch with your own heart. That preceding topic that we just talked about. Because when you really look at your heart and look at the life that your heart went through an entire lifetime, think about yourself as a child and think about all the things you've witnessed. Think about all the things your eyes have seen, your ears have heard. Think about what this world has said to you, has shown you. Think about all the difficulties you've had sorting it all out, all the frustration, all the pain, the suffering, the shame, the difficulty. Life is difficult. And when you see the transparency that your heart has lived with, observing all of that, walking all those miles of suffering, and still bearing through it. Every heart in this room has been through hell. You're still here. And you're still growing. That's why you came here tonight, because you have every intention of going to the next level. And that's exactly what you should do. Give yourself a round of applause. Come on. That's integrity. That's virtue. That's strength. That's what heals. And that creates an energy. What we just did in here, what we just created in here, isn't just affecting us. That's manifest. That's reaching the entire world, the entire universe. Every rock, every seed, every tree, every plant, every ear, every cell, every vibration, every molecule, every atom in the universe just vibrated because of that energy. You probably saved somebody's life and you may never know it. So how can you continue to replicate that virtue? How can you continue to replicate that energy? You got to make a commitment. One of the things I thought of driving here tonight is, I've waited a lifetime to do this kind of a program and to share healing with as many people as I could. But the one thing that really disturbed me is I've talked to 1,000 people who've been to the most incredible concerts, or they've been to the most incredible trips to Europe, or cruises, and they've done these everybody in America has done something spectacular. Everybody. But what happens Monday morning after they get home? It may as well have never happened, at least 2 or 3 weeks later anyway. So I thought about that, and I thought, you know what? It doesn't have to be spectacular. But what it really does have to be is authentic. It has to be realer than anything they've ever experienced. And there's nothing more real than your real self. There's nothing more real than the observer behind your eyes that watches your life go by, and it's waiting to be invited to a lot more. So life is what you're here for, and there's a lot more to be had. The affirmation here is, I am at peace within my true self. Music. Our next topic is swimming in the endless stream of consciousness. I wrote, "There is no limit to the reality a mind can author, once the ultimate observer is conscious of itself." Once again, I think the idea here is that there is much more to us than we typically have the opportunity to exercise. In this culture, we tend to operate at a personality level, a day-to-day level. Hi, how are you doing? See you later. Nice weather. But we don't often have the opportunity to do this. We don't often have the opportunity to really connect at very, very deep levels of consciousness in our lives. We are spirit within our bodies. We hear about that on Sunday sometimes, but I remember when I was a kid and I was an altar boy, first of all, I didn't speak Latin. I mean, I had a really hard time understanding what was going on. I mean, okay, spirit sounds like an interesting concept, but I think it's really important for us in a very personal, in a very intimate way, to come to know of the ultimate observer within us. There's always that moment in time when time sort of stands still. Perhaps it's in a meditation, perhaps it's quite spontaneous. Perhaps it's in a moment of love. But there are always those moments in our lives where time stands still and the spirit within us comes forth. You know, we hear all kinds of different stories. I had a woman a number of years ago who was actually a nurse who underwent emergency surgery. She was a young woman at the time, but she underwent intestinal surgery and was rushed into the emergency room, and they opened her up, and she actually, when she came back to, recanted the exact thing that happened, the entire surgery, because she slipped out of her body, hovered over the operating table, and the way she expressed it, it was remarkable the way she told the story. She said that everything just happened so fast, and bang, bang, next minute she's in the emergency room, and then she's on the operating table, and they opened her up, and suddenly she just was hovering over her body and watching everything that was going on. And she actually sat with the physicians afterwards, told them exactly what they did, what time it was done. They went back and checked all the medical records. She was on the second with everything that happened. But anyway, she told the story that so many of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stories reflect, where she said she was out of the body and she was being called, in one sense, to the other side, down the big tunnel, the white light. But in another sense, she said, my daughter is here. I can't leave my daughter. So she was really happy because as she went down the tunnel, she actually saw her dad. And her dad told her, not your time. Big smile on his face. You're going back down there. You got to be with your daughter. That's exactly what happened. In an instant, she said it was like getting swooped into a powerful vacuum, back in the body again, and the next thing you know, she had consciousness back in her body. But she said to me afterwards, she said, you know, I really never understood spirit until then. Because you can talk about it, and you can talk about it, but when you feel yourself as nothing but pure spirit like that, there are no words. So we take lessons from some of those out-of-body experiences, and they're quite dramatic, no question. But the bottom line of it is, you and I not only have an opportunity, but I believe a spiritual responsibility to become whole, especially in spirit. And the idea that our consciousness is the beginning of that process, is the birthing of that process. It's through our observer self. It's the idea that we can observe who we are, that we can peer through these eyes that we have in here this evening and know that on the other side of those eyes, just like in those cells, there's a force, there's an energy, there's a spirit that music creates. There's all kinds of subtleness to what happens on the other side of the cell. Well, there's actually that same thing on the other side of your eyes, and it's called consciousness. Can I actually have one person come up just for a minute? Anybody? Okay, why don't you come on up? Let's make her feel welcome. Come right up. Here. How are you?
I'm Lois.
Lois.
Yeah.
Come on up here, Lois.
We talked on the radio.
We did. Oh, yes. Well,
Well, nice
let's
to meet
dance.
you.
Come on up here. I'm so glad you're here.
Nice to meet you.
I'm going to actually now just kind of feed a couple ideas your way and just see how you do. I'm going to have you raise up. Is this arm okay?
Yes.
Okay, make a fist there for me. Raise up a little bit higher and resist good and strong. A little bit higher than that and resist good and strong. Excellent. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to do pickles and chocolate ice cream. We're done doing that. I'm going to ask you to think for a moment here, resist good and strong, about a couple phrases. The first phrase is, I am worthy of love. And raise up nice and strong. And think of that phrase. I am worthy of love. Okay? Now what I want you to do is this. Close your eyes just for a minute and drop your arm down. Now you don't have to be exact about this because we're talking about energy here. Your mind will get the concept. But I want you to go back at age 1, so to speak. Raise up. Age 1, I am worthy of love. Age 2, I am worthy of love. Age 3, I am worthy of love. Raise up. Age 4, I am worthy of love. Age 5, age 6. Age 7, age 8, age 9, age 10, age 11, age 12. Age 13, 14. Okay? 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay? I want you to relax for a second. Keep your eyes closed. What I want you to do now is I want you to employ the highest force of virtue in you, your spirit, your ultimate observer, your compassionate heart, the warrior in you, and I want you to kind of think back to those ages just in general, and I want you to think of your entire self over the course of your life and the wholeness of you acknowledging lovability. You are lovable and you know you're lovable, as we just found out a second ago. But I want you to heal every memory you've ever had in that context. Just because you want to, just because you love yourself, and just because you have the consciousness and the deservedness. And raise up and resist. Good and strong. Okay, I want you to now think of age 1, you're lovable. Age 2, age 3, age 4, age 5, age 6, age 7, age 8, age 9, age 10, age 11, age 12, age 13, 14, 15, 16. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great...
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good night. Thank you. So we don't need to make this complicated. Thank you, Candida. We don't need to make this complicated. Obviously, she has the same thing you have. You have the spirit. You have the consciousness. If you have the intention, remember this. There are two important words in all this. Innocence and deservedness, the most important words in the dictionary. Innocence is something you started with and never lost. Deservedness is something you started with and never lost. I'm talking about heart, soul. I'm not talking about the part of you that should be given permission to be human and to experiment and to live and to learn and to go through the process that the universe goes through of expansion and contraction. Pickles and chocolate ice cream, right? So I'm talking about the deservedness and the innocence that you never ever lose. The affirmation here is, I am pure awareness radiating pure joy. I'll say it again. I am pure awareness radiating pure joy. When you talk about swimming in your stream of consciousness, we're talking about the ultimate conscious connection that you have to your life through your soul. And I want you to just really focus, and when this music plays, on your commitment to expanding your commitment to yourself, just like we saw here. Your commitment to healing your life because you have the power within yourself to do so. Music, please. The last topic we're going to talk about this evening is realizing the healing power of spirit, realization, reaching full realization of what your potential is. I wrote this: the foundation of our essence is comprised of the infinite. When self emanates from that place, it resides in the realm of infinite possibilities. There, pure intention and the healer within become as one. The idea that you and I have limitless resources within our inner universe. Again, we are not an individual. Each one of us is a universe, interconnected with everything else in the outer universe, including each of us. Eckhart Tolle said, when he remarked about spirit, said something that I absolutely really love. And Eckhart Tolle said this: "It is more deeply who you are and eminently more powerful than anything in the world of form." Eminently more powerful than anything in the world of form is your spirit. The idea of full realization that you and I have limitless potential. You know, neurolinguistic programming research is really fascinating because they study neurophysiology, the way the brain works and all that stuff, and they talk extensively about there being three minds, three sections to the human mind. Not the brain, the mind. Brain, of course, is a local organ in this noggin, and mind is infinite and limitless. Mind is non-local. Your mind can go anywhere it wants, anytime it wants. And if you think of the three areas of mind that NLP research discusses, they talk about the subconscious down here, which is a place of memory and pain and limitation. They talk about next a layer of conscious mind, and then the highest layer, of course, is superconscious mind. That's the quantum world that we now have available to us. That's the place where each of us is now destined to evolve into. That's a big reason that we're all here. The reinforcement of moving into our higher mind. That is the greatest medicine in the universe. There is no greater medicine. Now, the researchers tell us that in subconscious mind, we produce an average of 20,000 thoughts a day, 80% of which are repetitious. Does that sound familiar? Well, if you take one step up in this layer cake of consciousness, you've got conscious mind, which produces 500,000 thoughts a day, only half of which are repetitious. Not bad. You move up one more layer in the top of the layer cake to the superconscious mind, and they tell us we're capable of 5 billion brand new thoughts every day. 5 billion brand new thoughts. I love the story about Michelangelo when, the story about when he was asked about the angel that he created out of marble. And he said, because they questioned, they said, well, how did you do that? That is just incredible. That is magnificent. How did you ever create that beautiful statue? And he said, there was an angel in that marble. I had to get him out. And the idea that you could literally think that way. You know, there's a great story that Wayne Dyer talks about all the time when he talks about how, you know, one of the great composers was asked, I think it was Mozart, was asked by one of his students. He said, oh my God, what a magnificent symphony that is. I'm just so jealous, Master. He said, why can't I write a symphony like that, and when will I be able to do it? I really want to do that. Why is it that I can't do that? And he said, well, look, at first, why don't you start off just by writing a minuet? Yeah, start off small. Work your way up. And he said, yeah, but you did it. And he said, yeah, but I never asked anybody how to do it either. So there's a place where we live in a zone of consciousness that's very mundane down here. 20,000 thoughts, repetitious, same old stuff, same old stuff, same old stuff. you're not going to paint your masterpiece there. You take a step up because you're taking a step into a realm that you're drawn to because you look around you. You watch the 11 o'clock news. Same old, subconscious living. I mean, it might as well be yesterday or the day before. It's like rehash. Same old negativity that we're being spoon-fed every day. But we don't really like that. We're addicted to it. That's why they give it to us. They're appealing to our addiction, of course. That's the great American way. But we really don't like it. It actually sickens us. Did you ever try to go to bed after the 11 o'clock news? You know, I have so many people come to me all the time to say, I can't sleep at night. And the first question I ask them is, do you watch the 11 o'clock news? Yeah, stop doing that. They call me back, I sleep a lot better now. I had one guy say, you know what, I sleep almost all the way through the night now. He says, all I do is watch the 6 o'clock news. We have the ability to climb out of that hole. We have that ability. And as I said earlier, the most important thing to me is we have the ability to not just walk out of another presentation tonight. You know, it wasn't important to me that we have $1 million worth of spectacular. You know, they'll do that at the Esplanade on the 4th of July. But what is important isn't that the external spectacular didn't happen for a moment, but hopefully the internal spectacular started in a way that it will never stop. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If we take anything from the experience of this evening, we want to take self. You may have come with 3 or 4 people, but I want you to take yourself home. And I want you to take yourself home in a way you've never done that before. And I want you to wake up with yourself, no matter who you wake up with. Now I mean that. And I want you to walk through your day tomorrow with yourself, and I want you to continue to follow a path each and every day where you're holding hands with something within yourself called the real you. And I want this to be the line of demarcation where that all started. That's an opportunity to manifest real healing. No pills, no magic, and all I did is light a spark. You have the fire. Keep it alive. And when you go to bed each night and you see the stars, or the raindrops, more likely it will be raindrops, I suppose, this time of year, I want them to remind you where you come from every time you see a raindrop. Instead of saying, damn it, we're not going to have that great outdoor picnic tomorrow, I want you to look at the raindrops and let them remind you where you came from. And let them reflect the clarity of who you really are. And when you look at the sun, let the sun remind you where you came from and who you really are. And the stars in the sky. Don't ever just take them for granted. They never stop talking to you. Don't ever stop listening to them. The affirmation here is, I am eternal spirit, limitless and infinite. Music. My intention this evening was not that you would be doctored for one night, but that you would engage yourself in healing for an eternity. I only hope you follow through. God bless everybody.